Greetings everyone. Dr. Loquitur Maka here, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss on anything that we post. And to my returning crew, welcome back, welcome back. Thank you guys for the love, thank you for the support. And hey guys, everyone, happy new year to everyone. I hope this year becomes productive. I hope you become successful. I hope you achieve all the goals that you have set for this particular year. Guys, before we dive in, I do want to mention that I am not an expert when it comes to research, but just as an institutional researcher or a researcher, I am just sharing the little that I know. And I do hope that you find the information that I share on this platform helpful. So, in our last video or our last session, we actually titled the literature review, what it is, why is it important, and how you can master it. So if you haven't seen that video, please go check it out immediately you finish this one. So on this particular one, as you can see on the title below, so we are now moving on to one of the next big steps in your research journey, designing your research. This is all about how you are going to answer your research question. And guys, I promise, it doesn't have to be as scary as it sounds. And I think I'm gonna start to sound like a broken record when I say this on each session that I do because I want to simplify it. So let's break it down. What is research design? A research design is a strategy for answering your research questions using empirical data. So, this is the blueprint for your study, right? So, creating a research design means making decisions about one, your research objectives and approach, whether you are going to use primary or secondary data, your sampling methods, your data collection, the procedures that you are going to follow to collect data, your data analysis methods. So, a well planned research design helps you or helps to ensure that your methods actually match the research objectives and that you use the right kind of analysis for your data. So now think of it like, let's say, baking or cooking. So if your question is, what is the best chocolate cake recipe? Now, your research design is how you are going to test different recipes, measure your ingredients, bake your cake, and also taste your cake. And then you will have to answer now that question. Then you'll say, okay, the best chocolate recipe is recipe number one, or recipe number two, or recipe number three. No. So here are the steps that I want you to consider when you are designing your research. One, consider your aims and approach. Now, you need to define your research question, decide on the approach that best suits your study. For example, how can teachers adapt their lessons for effective remote learning? Now, that is your research question. So, now this is where you're going to decide whether you are going to take a qualitative or a quantitative approach. Number two, choose a type of research design. Now, this is the approaches. So, are you going to take a qualitative approach? Now, when we're talking about qualitative approach, this is where you understand or you're trying to understand the experiences and also maybe generate new ideas. So, this is all about you having conversations or just sitting down, having focus groups, and so on and so forth. So it's more about experiences, qualitative, right? Or are you going to choose a quantitative approach? Now, with quantitative approach, as mostly if you want to measure variables or test hypotheses, right? Or are you going to go for a mixed method approach? Now, this is where you combine both of these for a complete picture, right? Maybe you conduct surveys or um, do a questionnaire, but afterwards you conduct interviews, right, for an in-depth information, right? Now, the third thing that you need to take note of when designing your research is identifying your population and sampling method. So determine who your participants will be and how you will select them. Number four, choose your data collection methods. So now you're going to decide on the techniques. Are you going for surveys? Are you going for interviews? Are you going for experiments? Now, this will mostly be guided with your step number two, right? Um, in fact, step number one and step number two, when you consider your aim as well as the approach, and when you now finally choose on the type of approach that you're going for, right? Obviously, if it's a qualitative, chances are you will go for more in-depth interviews, focus groups, approaches, and so forth. If it's a quantitative, you might go for surveys, designing a questionnaire and sending out surveys, and so on and so forth. Then, the other thing that you need to do, number five, is to plan your data collection procedures. Now, this is where you actually outline the steps that you are going to take to collect your data. Then the sixth one, decide on your data analysis strategy. Plan how you will analyze the data to answer your research question. So now one of the things that I normally say is when it comes to these steps, just take one page, plan it through, or even sticky notes. Go through each stage, just brainstorm with yourself, talk to yourself, guys. I know I may sound crazy, but research makes you crazy. You will find yourself talking alone. You will find yourself talking to yourself because this thing has to make sense to you first before you convince other people, before you go out and defend your proposal. So I want us to go back a little on the three main types of research methods or approaches that I spoke about. I mentioned quantitative research. Now, quantitative research basically focuses on numbers and the data that you can measure. For examples, these are surveys, these are experiments, this is statistical analysis. Now, this is mostly best for research questions like how many students use online learning platforms? Then you may want to test, let's say, a certain hypothesis or whatever. Then we move to qualitative research. Now, qualitative research, I've mentioned this earlier, it focuses on understanding experiences and meanings. Right. Now, The examples can be interviews, as I have mentioned this, it can be focus group discussions, it can be case studies. And this is best for, let's say, questions like what are the students' experiences with online learning? Now, remember, quantitative, we're like, how many students use the online learning platforms? But now we are trying to check what are their experiences, right? And then we have mixed methods. Now, this combines both quantitative and qualitative approaches. Let's say you are surveying a large group, but now you also want to interview a smaller group for deeper insights. Now, this can be best for questions like how do online learning platforms impact performance and student engagement? You see that these questions, they are in the same theme because they're all talking about online learning, but because they are asked differently, then it means the methods of answering this question, this main research questions, will differ. Now, here's how you decide which methods to use. Now, again, gonna say this again, guys. I'm gonna sound like a broken record because some of the things that I will say, you'll find that I said it 2 minutes into the session. So, how you decide is when you start with your question, guys. Your question is very important. Your question is very important when it comes to research. So, is your question about numbers? Is your question about experiences? Quantitative is for numbers, qualitative is for experiences, mixed is for both. Then you check your resources. What resources do you have? Do you have access to the participants? Do you have access to tools or softwares? Do you have access um, do you have enough resources? Do you have time? And guys, the third thing is that time matters. Quantitative studies are often faster if you are analyzing existing data. Um, but also, even if you're going to collect data, say send out surveys, you can set up a specific period and you close it at a specific time, and then you start analyzing your data. But qualitative research will take time as compared to quantitative because once you have collected your data, you will take time to actually analyze because some of the data that you have collected will actually need you to transcribe. Some you might even need to translate from one language to another, and also collecting that data on its own will take time because sometimes you'll have, if it's interview, you're meeting one person at a time and you have to interview them, or it's not as faster as quantitative data. But not to be biased or anything, qualitative remains my favorite because I want to understand, and it helps if you even probe someone, you get deeper insights. Let's say someone gives you the answer, but you feel no man, there is more to this. But if you are just sending out a survey, it's not really possible to actually get into detailed insights, you know. So now, once you have chosen your methods, now it's time to collect data. So here's a common techniques. Now, with The first one, surveys. Now, this is great for a large groups, and you can use tools like Google Forms. You can use Eversys, you can use a Survey Monkey, and so on and so forth. It depends which one you are more accessible to. Then, second technique is conducting interviews. I've mentioned this before. This is best for getting personal, for getting those detailed insights. So, you will have to be prepared with a list of open-ended questions, but now, as I have mentioned earlier, that it's also important to have probes so that you can dig deeper into the responses. Then we have focus group discussions. Now, this is useful for gathering diverse perspectives on a topic, right? Now, you are going to facilitate the discussion amongst, let's say, a smaller group of participants. But again, focus group discussions are also guided by open-ended questions. And also, even with this one, as much as it's a group, but it's important to have probes as well so that you can dig deeper into the respondents' responses, right? Or the participants' responses. Then the fourth one is conducting experiments, right? Now, this is perfect for testing, let's say, cause and effect relationships. Now, this is where you set up a controlled environment to compare the variables, right? And then we have observations. Now, observations are useful for studying behaviors or interactions in real time. So, if you are doing observations, you might need to take detailed notes. You might need to use video recordings for analysis and all of that. So, you are observing. So, this is more about real time interactions. And I've seen a lot of people who are conducting their research, let's say, in education or sociology. Social work studies. These is this sometimes or most of the time actually fit best because in most of the cases in those fields, you are trying to get, especially social studies, you are trying to get to study behaviors or look into the interactions, and it's mostly done real time, or it's better off done real time. Now, before we close, before we end this session, here are some quick tips that you can use to actually nail your research design. One, guys, always pilot test your tools. Always make sure if you have a survey or interview questions, make sure that you test them. Test your survey or your interview questions with a smaller group first to make sure that it's clear. Don't just send out the tool and you're like, okay, no, I'm good now. No, always make sure that you test so that you can understand from other people. They give you feedback that, okay, this question is not as clear and. And then number two, stay ethical. You need to get a consent from the participant. And you need to follow the ethical guidelines, especially if your research, guys, involves people. So get consent from your participant, follow ethical guidelines. Also, make sure, number three, stay flexible, guys. Research rarely goes exactly as planned. It's rare. So be ready to adjust your methods if needed. And also, second last one, document everything. Keep details of your records, the processes, the research process, the decisions that you have made, the changes to your design. This will ensure that there is transparency And also seek feedback. You know, share your research design with your mentor, share it with your peers, and because this they might spot certain issues or suggest improvements here and there. Do not take this you as your own and you don't want to get everyone involved. But the nice thing is that every university, if you are conducting research as a student, you will have a supervisor. Now, this is where this helps. You're going to get feedback from your supervisor. So just try to build upon that relationship with your supervisor so that you can get the best out of them. Now, guys, now that we have covered the basics of designing growth, now you will remember I didn't dig deep into all these approaches and all. One thing that I want to ask you now that we have done this, are you now ready to start drafting that research proposal? Because I think in the next episode, I want to take you through drafting your research proposal. So let me know on the comment section below if are you ready to start drafting that proposal. It's 2025, guys. Let's get these proposal up and running. Let's submit the proposals to the supervisors. Let's ensure them that we are on this. You have me, guys. You have me. And hey, that's it for the session. I hope you are feeling a little more confident about designing your research. If this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Please share it with your friends, guys. Let me know in the comment section below what type of research method you are planning to use or you are using currently. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more research tips, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much. Bye for now. Love and light. Till next time.